Hello and welcome to Ben Omtad, a podcast of open-minded thought and discussion. Here I recount and discuss folk tales, myths, and philosophy with various people, hoping to grow through dialogue and bring forth truth, wisdom, and insight in the interaction. Hello, yes, I'm here with my friend LL, and we're going to talk about Beauty and the Beast today. Specifically, we're going to read a version in English by Lumsden and Son. That is a translation of the one of the original French versions by Beaumont of Beauty and the Beast. But first, we'll start off with some practices. And please skip forward if you don't want to join along with us. We did a little exercise and stretching beforehand. I think you did a horse stance, right? To work on
Mhm.
the kind of muscular strength and endurance in the lower body. And I did something similar, and I did some bent over rows as well, with one hand each. Um, and yes, so now we'll start with meditation. We're not going to do contemplation today, but we'll do a little breathing meditation. So just please settle into your chair. Just kind of feel the energy of your body. We'll start to relax all the muscles. Close your eyes or lower your gaze if you'd like. So we're just starting with the top of the head and relaxing the eyes and the face and the jaw. And just going down the neck and the shoulders and the top of the arms and the lower arms and hands. Slow breaths, relaxing the top of the back and middle and lower back, your rest of your torso, your abdomen. Slow, deep breaths in and out, relaxing the hips and the seat, just down to the thighs and the lower legs, your feet. And now, just wherever you notice it the most, just concentrate on the breath. Just coming in and out. If your mind wanders, just return it to the breath. That is the practice of training your mind. Okay, thank you. Now coming out of meditation, and we'll go ahead and do a reading of the story. So this is Lumsden and Sons, Beauty and the Beast, 1820, a tale for the entertainment of juvenile readers. So once again, this is a translation of the French Beaumont version, which is one of the early versions of Beauty and the Beast. There was once a very rich merchant who had 6 children, 3 sons and 3 daughters. Being a man of sense, he spared no cost for their education, but gave them all kinds of masters. His daughters were extremely handsome, especially the youngest. When she was little, everybody admired her and called her the little beauty, so that as she grew up, she still went by the name of Beauty, which made her sisters very jealous. The youngest, as she was handsome, was also better than her sisters. The 2 eldest had a great deal of pride because they were rich. They gave themselves ridiculous airs and would not visit other merchants' daughters, nor keep company with any but persons of quality. They went out every day upon parties of pleasure, balls, plays, concerts, etc., and laughed at their youngest sister because she spent the greatest part of her time in reading good books. As it was known that they were to have great fortunes, several eminent merchants made their addresses to them, but the 2 eldest said they would never marry unless they could meet with a duke or an earl at least. Beauty very civilly thanked them that courted her, and told them that she was too young yet to marry, but chose to stay with her father a few years longer. So again, we have the virtuous daughter close to her family. All at once the merchant lost his whole fortune, excepting a small country house at a great distance from town, and told his children, with tears in his eyes, that they must go there and work for their living. The 2 eldest answered that they would not leave the town, for they had several lovers, who they were sure would be glad to have them, though they had no fortune. But in this they were mistaken, for their lovers slighted and forsook them in their poverty. As they were not beloved on account of their pride, everybody said, they do not deserve to be pitied. We are glad to see their pride humbled. Let them go and give themselves quality airs in milking the cows and minding their dairy. But, added they, we are extremely concerned for Beauty, as she was such a charming, sweet-tempered creature, spoke so kindly to poor people, and was of such an affable, obliging disposition. Nay, several gentlemen would have married her, though they knew she had not a penny, but she told them she could not think of leaving her poor father in his misfortunes, but was determined to go along with him into the country to comfort and attend him. Poor Beauty at first was sadly grieved at the loss of her fortune, but said to herself, were I to cry ever so much, that would not make things better. I must try to make myself happy without a fortune. When they came to their country house, the merchant and his 3 sons applied themselves to husbandry and tillage, and Beauty rose at 4 in the morning and made haste to have the house clean and breakfast ready for the family. In the beginning, she found it very difficult, for she had not been used to work as a servant, but in less than 2 months she grew stronger and healthier than ever. After she had done her work, she read, played on the harpsichord, or else sung whilst she spun. On the contrary, her 2 sisters did not know how to spend their time. They got up at 10 and did nothing but saunter about the whole day, lamenting the loss of their fine clothes and acquaintance. Do but see our younger sister, said they one to the other. What a poor, stupid, mean-spirited creature she is, to be contented with such an unhappy situation. The good merchant was of a quite different opinion. He knew very well that Beauty outshone her sisters, in her person as well as her mind, and admired her humility, industry, and patience. For her sisters not only left all the work of the house to do, but insulted her at every moment. The family had lived about a year in this retirement when the merchant received a letter with an account that a vessel on board of which he had effects was safely arrived. The news had liked to have turned the heads of the two eldest daughters, who immediately flattered themselves with the hope of returning to town, for they were quite weary of a country life. And when they saw their father ready to set out, they begged of him to buy them new gowns, caps, rings, and all manner of trifles. But Beauty asked for nothing, for she thought to herself that all the money her father was going to receive would scarce be sufficient to purchase everything her sisters wanted. "What will you have, Beauty?" said her father. "Since you are so kind as to think of me," answered she, "be so kind as to bring me a rose, for as none grow hereabouts, they are a kind of rarity." Not that Beauty cared for a rose, but she asked for something, lest she should seem by her example to condemn her sister's conduct, who would have said she did it only to look particular. The good man went on his journey, but when he came there, they went to law with him about the merchandise, and after a great deal of trouble and pains to no purpose, he came back as poor as before. He was within 30 miles of his own house, thinking on the pleasure he should have in seeing his children again, when going through a large forest he lost himself. It rained and snowed terribly. Besides, the wind was so high that it threw him twice off his horse, and night coming on, he began to apprehend being either starved to death with cold and hunger, or else devoured by the wolves, whom he heard prowling, howling all around him. When, on a sudden, looking through a long walk of trees, he saw a light at some distance, and going on a little farther, perceived it came from a palace illuminated from top to bottom. The merchant returned God thanks for this happy discovery, and hastened to the palace, but was greatly surprised at not meeting with anyone in the outcourts. His horse followed him, and seeing a large stable open, went in, and finding both hay and oats, the poor beast, who was almost famished, fell to eating very heartily. The merchant tied him up to the manger and walked towards the house, where he saw no one, but entering into a large hall, he found a good fire and a table plentifully set out, with but one cover laid. As he was quite wet through with the rain and snow, he drew near the fire to dry himself. "I hope," said he, "the master of the house, or his servants, will excuse the liberty I take. I suppose it will not be long before some of them appear." He waited a considerable time till it struck 11, and still nobody came. At last he was so hungry that he could stay no longer, but took a chicken and eat it in 2 mouthfuls, trembling all the while. After this he drank a few glasses of wine, and, growing more courageous, he went out of the hall and crossed through several grand apartments with magnificent furniture, till he came into a chamber which had an exceeding good bed in it. And as he was very much fatigued, and it was past midnight, he concluded it was best to shut the door and go to bed. It was 10 the next morning before the merchant waked, and as he was going to rise, he was astonished to see a good suit of clothes in the room of his own, which were quite spoiled. "Certainly," said he, "this palace belongs to some kind fairy, who has seen and pitied my distress." He looked through a window, but instead of snow, saw the most delightful arbors, interwoven with the most beautiful flowers that ever were beheld. He then returned to the great hall, where he had supped the night before, and found some chocolate ready on a little table. "Thank you, good Madam Fairy," said he aloud, "for being so careful as to provide me a breakfast. I am extremely obliged to you for all your favors." The good man drank his chocolate, and then went to look for his horse. But passing through an arbor of roses, he remembered Beauty's request to him, and gathered a branch on which were several. Immediately he heard a great noise, and saw such a frightful beast coming toward him that he was ready to faint away. "You are very ungrateful," said the beast to him in a terrible voice. "I have saved your life by receiving you into my castle, and in return you steal my roses, which I value beyond anything in the universe. But you shall die for it. I give you but a quarter of an hour to prepare yourself, to say your prayers." The merchant fell on his knees and lifted up both his hands. My lord, said he, I beseech you to forgive me. Indeed, I had no intention to offend in gathering a rose for one of my daughters, who desired me to bring her one. My name is not my lord, replied the monster, but Beast. I don't love compliments, not I. I like people should speak as they think, and so do not imagine I am to be moved by any of your flattering speeches. But you say you have got daughters. I will forgive you on condition that one of them come willingly and suffer for you. Let me have no words, but go about your business, and swear that if your daughter refuse to die in your stead, you will return within 3 months. The merchant had no mind to sacrifice his daughters to the ugly monster, but he thought in obtaining this respite he should have the satisfaction of seeing them once more. So he promised upon oath he would return, and the beast told him he might set out when he pleased. But, added the beast, you shall not depart empty-handed. Go back to the room where you lay, and you will see a great empty chest. Fill it with whatever you like best, and I will send it to you home. And at the same time Beast withdrew. Well, the good man said to himself, if I must die, I shall have the comfort, at least, of leaving something to my poor children. He returned to the bedchamber, and finding a great quantity of broad pieces of gold, he filled the great chest the beast had mentioned, locked it, and afterwards took his horse out of the stable, leaving the palace with as much grief as he had entered it with joy. The horse, of his own accord, took one of the roads of the forest, and in a few hours the good man was at home. His children came around him, but instead of receiving their embraces with pleasure, he looked upon them, and holding up the branch he had in his hands, he burst into tears. Here, beauty, said he, take these roses, but little do you think how dear they are like to cost your unhappy father, and then related his fatal adventure. Immediately the two eldest set up lamentable outcries, and said all manner of ill-natured things to Beauty, who did not cry at all. Do but see the pride of that little wretch, said they. She would not ask for fine clothes as we did, but no, truly, Miss wanted to distinguish herself. So now she will be the death of our poor father, and yet she does not so much as shed a tear. Why should I answer Beauty? It would be very needless, for my father shall not suffer upon my account, since the monster will accept one of his daughters. I will deliver myself up to all his fury, and I am very happy in thinking that my death will save my father's life and be proof of my tender love for him. No, sister, said her three brothers, that shall not be. We will go find the monster, and either kill him or perish in the attempt. Do not imagine any such thing, my sons, said the merchant. Beast's power is so great that I have no hopes of your overcoming him. I am charmed with Beauty's kind and generous offer, but I cannot yield to it. I am old and have not long to live, so can only lose a few years, which I regret for your sakes alone, my dear children. Indeed, father, said Beauty, you shall not go to the palace without me. You cannot hinder me from following you. It was to no purpose all they could say. Beauty still insisted on setting out for the fine palace, and her sisters were delighted at it, for her virtue and amiable qualities made them envious and jealous. The merchant was so afflicted at the thoughts of losing his daughter that he had quite forgot the chest full of gold. But at night, when he retired to rest, no sooner had he shut his chamber door than, to his great astonishment, he found it by his bedside. He was determined, however, not to tell his children that he was grown rich, because they would have wanted to return to town, and he was resolved not to leave the country. But he trusted Beauty with the secret, who informed him that two gentlemen came into his absence and courted her sisters. She begged her father to consent to their marriage and give them fortunes, for she was so good that she loved them, and forgave them heartily all their ill usage. These wicked creatures rubbed their eyes with an onion to force some tears when they parted with their sister. But her brothers were really concerned. Beauty was the only one who did not shed tears at parting, because she would not increase their uneasiness. The horse took the direct road to the palace, and towards evening they perceived it illuminated as at first. The horse went of himself into the stable, and the good man and his daughter came into the great hall, where they found a table splendidly served up, and two covers. The merchant had no heart to eat, but Beauty endeavored to appear cheerful, sat down to table, and helped him afterwards. Afterwards, thought she to herself, Beast surely has a mind to fatten me before he eats me, since he provides such a plentiful entertainment. When they had supped, they heard a great noise, and the merchant, all in tears, bid his poor child farewell, for he thought Beast was coming. Beauty was sadly terrified at his horrid form, but she took courage as well as she could, and the monster having asked her if she came willingly, yes, said she, trembling. You are very good, and I am greatly obliged to you. Honest man, go your ways tomorrow morning, but never think of returning here again. Farewell, Beauty. Farewell, Beast, answered she, and immediately the monster withdrew. Oh, daughter, said the merchant, embracing Beauty, I am almost frightened to death. Believe me, you had better go back and let me stay here. No, father, said Beauty in a resolute tone. You shall set out tomorrow morning and leave me to the care and protection of Providence. They went to bed and thought they should not close their eyes all night, but scarce were they laid down than they fell fast asleep, and Beauty dreamed a fi- and Beauty dreamed. A fine lady came and said to her, I am content, Beauty, with your good will. This good action of yours, in giving up your own life to save your father's, shall not go unrewarded. Beauty waked and told her father her dream, and though it helped to comfort him a little, yet he could not help crying bitterly when he took leave of his dear child. As soon as he was gone, Beauty sat down in the great hall and fell a crying likewise. But as she was mistress of a great deal of resolution, she recommended herself to God, and resolved not to be uneasy the little time she had to live, for she firmly believed Beast would eat her up that night. However, she thought she might as well walk about till then, and view this fine castle, which she could not help admiring. It was a delightful, pleasant place, and she was extremely surprised at seeing a door over which was wrote Beauty's apartment. She opened it hastily and was quite dazzled with the magnificence that reigned throughout. But what chiefly took up her attention and was a large library, a harpsichord, and several music books. Well, said she to herself, I see they will not let my time hang heavy on my hands for want of amusement. Then she reflected, were I but to stay here a day, there would not have been all these preparations. This consideration inspired her with fresh courage, and opening the library, she took a book and read these words in letters of gold. Welcome, Beauty, banish fear. You are queen and mistress here. Speak your wishes, speak your will. Swift obedience meets them still. Alas, said she with a sigh, there is nothing I desire so much as to see my poor father and to know what he is doing. She had no sooner said this, when casting her eyes on a great looking glass, to her great amazement she saw her own home, where her father arrived with a very dejected countenance. Her sisters went to meet him, and notwithstanding their endeavors to appear sorrowful, their joy, felt for having got rid of their sister, was visible in every feature. A moment after, everything disappeared, and Beauty's apprehensions at this proof of Beast's complacence. At noon she found dinner ready, and while at table was entertained with an excellent concert of music, though without seeing anybody. But at night, as she was going to sit down to supper, she heard the noise Beast made, and could not help being sadly terrified. Beauty, said the monster, will you give me leave to see you sup? That is as you please, answered Beauty, trembling. No, replied the beast, you alone are mistress here. You need only bid me gone If my presence is troublesome, I will immediately withdraw. But tell me, do you not think me very ugly? That is true, said Beauty, for I cannot tell a lie, but I believe you are very good-natured. So I am, said the monster, but then, besides my ugliness, I have no sense. I know very well that I am a poor, silly, stupid creature. "'Tis no sign of folly to think so," replied Beauty, "for never did fool know this, or had so humble a conceit of his own understanding." "Eat then, Beauty," said the monster, "and endeavor to amuse yourself in your palace, for everything here is yours, and I should be very uneasy if you were not happy." "Yes, you are very obliging," answered Beauty. "I own I am pleased with your kindness, and when I consider that, your deformity scarce appears." "Yes, yes," said the beast, "my heart is good, but still I am a monster." "Among mankind," says Beauty, "there are many that deserve that name more than you, and I prefer you, just as you are, to those who, under a human form, hide a treacherous, corrupt, and ungrateful heart." "If I had sense enough," replied the beast, "I would make a fine compliment to thank you, but I am so dull that I can only say I am greatly obliged to you." Beauty ate a hearty supper, and had almost conquered her dread of the monster, but she had like to have fainted away, when he said to her, "Beauty, will you be my wife?" She was some time before she durst answer, for she was afraid of making him angry if she refused. At last, however, she said, trembling, "No, beast." Immediately the poor monster began to sigh and hissed so frightfully that the whole palace echoed. But Beauty soon recovered her fright, for Beast, having said in a mournful voice, "Then farewell, Beauty," left the room, and only turned back now and then to look at her as he went out. When Beauty was alone, she felt a great deal of compassion for poor Beast. "Alas," said she, "'tis a thousand pities anything so good-natured should be so ugly." Beauty spent 3 months very contentedly in the palace. Every evening Beast paid her a visit and talked to her during her supper, very rationally, with plain good common sense, but never with what the world calls wit, and Beauty daily discovered some valuable qualifications in the monster, and seeing him often, had so accustomed her to his deformity that, far from dreading the time of his visit, she would often look on her watch to see when it would be 9, for the beast never missed coming at that hour. There was but one thing that gave Beauty any concern, which was that every night, before she went to bed, the monster always asked her if she would be his wife. One day she said to him, "Beast, you make me very uneasy. I wish I could consent to marry you, but I am too sincere to make you believe that will ever happen. I shall always esteem you as a friend. Endeavor to be satisfied with this." "I must," said the beast, "for, alas, I know too well my own misfortune, but then I love you with the tenderest affection. However, I ought to think myself happy that you will stay here. Promise me to never leave me." Beauty blushed at these words. She had seen in her glass that her father had pined himself sick for the loss of her, and she longed to see him again. "I could," answered she, "indeed, promise never to leave you entirely, but I have so great a desire to see my father that I shall fret to death if you refuse me that satisfaction." "I had rather die myself," said the monster, "than give you the least uneasiness. I will send you to your father. You shall remain with him, and poor Beast will die with grief." "No," said Beauty, weeping, "I love you too well to be the cause of your death. I give you my promise to return in a week. You have shown me that my sisters are married and my brothers gone to the army. Only let me stay a week with my father, as he is alone." "You shall be there tomorrow morning," said the beast, "but remember your promise. You need only lay your ring on the table before you go to bed, and when you have a mind to come back, farewell, Beauty." Beast sighed as usual, bidding her good night, and Beauty went to bed very sad at seeing him so afflicted. When she waked the next morning, she found herself at her father's, and having rang a little bell that was by her bedside, she saw the maid come, who, the moment she saw her, gave a loud shriek, at which the good man ran upstairs and thought he should have died with joy to see his dear daughter again. He held her fast, locked in his arms, above a quarter of an hour. As soon as the first transports were over, Beauty began to think of rising, and was afraid she had no clothes to put on. But the maid told her that she had just found in the next room a large trunk full of gowns covered with gold and diamonds. Beauty thanked good Beast for his kind care, and taking one of the plainest of them, she intended to make a present of the others to her sisters. She scarce had said so when the trunk disappeared. Her father told her that Beast insisted on her keeping them herself, and immediately both gowns and trunk came back again. Beauty dressed herself, and in the meantime they sent to her sisters, who had hasted thither with their husbands. They were both of them very unhappy. The eldest had married a gentleman, extremely handsome indeed, but so fond of his own person that he was full of nothing but his own dear self, and neglected his wife. The second had married a man of wit, but he only made use of it to plague and torment everybody, and his wife most of all. Beauty's sisters sickened with envy, and when they saw her dressed like a princess and more beautiful than ever, nor could all their obliging, affectionate behavior stifle their jealousy, which was ready to burst when she told them how happy she was. They went down into the garden to vent it in tears, and said one to the other, "In what is this little creature better than us, that she should be so much happier?" "Sister," said the eldest, "a thought just strikes my mind. Let us endeavor to detain her above a week, and perhaps the silly monster will be so enraged at her breaking her word that he will devour her." "Right, sister," answered the other. "Therefore we must show her as much kindness as possible. That's the only use of kindness they know." After they had taken this resolution, they went up and behaved so affectionately to their sister that poor Beauty wept for joy. When the week was expired, they cried and tore their hair, and seemed so sorry to part with her that she promised to stay a week longer. In the meantime, Beauty could not help reflecting on herself for the uneasiness she was likely to cause poor Beast, whom she sincerely loved, and really longed to see again. The 10th night she spent at her father's. She dreamed she was in the palace garden, and that she saw Beast extended on the grass plot, who seemed just expiring, and, in a dying voice, reproached her with her ingratitude. Beauty started out of her sleep, and bursting into tears, Am not I very wicked," said she, "to act so unkindly to Beast, that has studied so much to please me in everything? Is it his fault that he is so ugly and has so little sense? He is kind and good, and that is sufficient. Why did I refuse to marry him? I should be happier with a monster than my sisters are with their husbands. It is neither wit nor a fine person in a husband that makes a woman happy, but virtue, sweetness of temper, and complaisance. And Beast has all these valuable qualifications. It is true I do not feel the tenderness of affection for him, but I find I have the highest gratitude, esteem, and friendship, and I will not make him miserable were I to be so ungrateful. I should never forgive myself." Beauty, having said this, rose, put her ring on the table, and then laid down again. Scarce was she in bed before she fell asleep, and when she waked the next morning, she was overjoyed to find herself in the Beast's palace. She put on one of her richest suits to please him, and waited for evening with the utmost impatience. At last the wished-for hour came. The clock struck 9, yet no Beast appeared. Beauty then feared she had been the cause of his death. She ran crying and wringing her hands all about the palace, like one in despair, After having sought for him everywhere, she recollected her dream and flew to the canal in the garden, where she dreamed she saw him. There she found poor Beast stretched out, quite senseless, and, as she imagined, dead. She threw herself upon him without any dread, and finding his heart beat still, she fetched some water from the canal and poured it on his head. Beast opened his eyes and said to Beauty, "You forgot your promise, and I was so afflicted for having lost you that I resolved to starve myself. But since I have the happiness of seeing you once more, I die satisfied." "No, dear Beast," said Beauty, "you must not die. Live to be my husband. From this moment I give you my hand, and swear to be none but yours. Alas, I thought I had only a friendship for you, but the grief I now feel convinces me that I cannot live without you." Beauty scarcely had pronounced these words when she saw the palace sparkle with light, and fireworks, instruments of music, everything seemed to give notice of some great event. But nothing could fix her attention, and she turned to her dear Beast, for whom she trembled with fear. But how great was her surprise! Beast had disappeared, and she saw at her feet one of the loveliest princes that ever eye beheld, who returned her thanks for having put an end to the charm under which he had so long resembled a beast. Though this prince was worthy of all her attention, she could not forbear asking where Beast was. "You see him at your feet," said the prince. "A wicked fairy had condemned me to remain under that shape till a beautiful virgin should consent to marry me. The fairy likewise enjoined me to conceal my understanding. There was only in you there was only you in the world generous enough to be won by the goodness of my temper, and in offering you my crown, I can't discharge the obligations I have to you." Beauty, agreeably surprised, gave the charming prince her hand to rise. They then they went together into the castle, and Beauty was overjoyed to find in the great hall her father and his whole family, whom the beautiful lady that appeared to her in her dream had conveyed thither. "Beauty," said the lady, "come and receive the reward of your judicious choice. You have preferred virtue before either wit or beauty, and deserve to find a person in whom all these qualifications are united. You are going to be a great queen. I hope the throne will not lessen your virtue or make you forget yourself. As to you, ladies," said the fairy to Beauty's two sisters, "I know your hearts and all the malice they contain. Become two statues, but under this transformation still retain your reason. You shall stand before your sister's palace gate, and be it your punishment to behold her happiness, and it will not be in your power to return to your former state till you own your faults. But I am very much afraid that you will always remain statues. Pride, anger, gluttony, and idleness are sometimes conquered, but the conversion of a malicious and envious mind is a kind of miracle." Immediately the fairy gave a stroke with her wand, and in a moment all that were in the hall were transported into the prince's palace. His subjects received him with joy. He married Beauty and lived with her many years, and in their happiness, as it was founded on virtue, was complete. Finis. Well, that was Beauty and the Beast by it was a translation of from the French by Beaumont, um, written by J. Lumsden and Son, published 1820. What are your thoughts about that story? Overall, I thought this story. It's obvious that this story is kind of about a character of that's ideal in her sort of virtue or feminine virtue. You know, she's loyal and loving to her father. When they become poor, she becomes even more attractive somehow, and she develops her virtue even more. She becomes hardworking, good at household chores, stronger. She's educated. She loves reading, and she learns music as well. And then, this is sort of like the story is about just getting just rewards, right? So that um, the poverty that befalls the family in the first part of the story, uh, their virtue is rewarded later on in the story when they get to live at the castle, except for the two jealous and kind of malicious sisters who are turned into statues. And Beauty, of course, is made queen of the castle. And she has all the books that she wants, and she has music all the time. She's surrounded by beauty in the castle and the roses and everything. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of the what seems like a lot of the story was about.
Mhm.
So we had mentioned a little bit. There's a little bit about class in this story too. It starts off with a rich merchant. But his daughters are stuck up, but they don't want someone from their own class who is not as high in an aristocratic society as landed nobility. And they instead hold out for an offer of marriage from like a duke or an earl or something.
Mhm.
An interesting another class element in this story I thought was from the way that Beast talks. So when he goes to attack the father after the father has like taken a rose for Beauty, um, the father kind of pleads with him, calls him my lord and everything. But the beast says, I don't want to be talked to like that. Speak to me plainly. So I don't know if that's
Mhm.
something that this version added in, but that seemed like a class kind of element. Don't give me those aristocratic airs, try to flatter me. Speak to me plainly, man.
Mhm.
Yeah. So going through the story more, yeah, again, like in many of these stories, the youngest is yet the youngest of the sisters is the prettiest. There's that echo, that parallel with Cinderella that this story has, as well as many other parallels. And like your favorite version of Cinderella, Mulan. Oh wait, no, Mulan is actually an only child or something, right? So actually that's
Yeah,
something
at least in
different.
the Disney version. I'm not sure about the original versions, but
Yeah. Yeah, we might be using like some bastardized version or something. But yeah, um the youngest is the prettiest, and the eldest are jealous. I think that goes all the way back to the Roman mythological version of the story, Cupid and Psyche. Uh, Psyche has like some jealous sisters. Um, so yeah, so the merchant falls from his position of wealth, has to go into the country, and then this kind of shows the and increases the virtue of beauty and shows makes even more prominent the laziness and the vice of the sisters who get up at 10 and don't really do anything with their time and just kind of cause beauty problems and don't help her out with the household chores. Yeah. So you were saying one thing about this story is that basically beauty is the only kind of fully integrated or um she's the only person who's who's complete
mm,
because she's beautiful on the outside, beautiful on the inside, and as the story progresses, she gets even more virtuous,
mhm.
more
Yeah,
self-sacrificing, higher position, and all that
yeah,
stuff. And
yeah,
everyone else is kind of incomplete in some way. The prince is good on the inside, but he's horrendous, horrific on the outside. And the
mhm.
sisters are sort of the opposite of that.
Mhm.
They may look okay
Yeah,
on the outside, but they're vicious.
yeah. And then with the beast, I guess the just being rejected also kind of gives him some uh, thought processes that aren't that make him kind of unpleasant at times too. Even though he's still good
Hmm.
for the most part.
So you're attributing his sort of his sort of fierceness with the father to his being ill-treated by having the spell cast on him.
Perhaps as part of that, maybe he's feared a lot because of his appearance. But maybe the wicked fairy, he maybe he was lacking in virtue in some ways, and the fairy made him that way
Yeah,
for
that's what I was
punishment.
kind of
So
wondering.
maybe it wasn't like a truly wicked fairy, but maybe just wanted to teach him a lesson.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either. That's interesting that this is one difference between the sort of modern, I mean, the last few hundred years European versions of Beauty and the Beast and Cupid and Psyche. Uh, in the Roman mythology, so Cupid is not horrific at all. He's beautiful, but he cannot be seen by by Psyche, his wife. And that has to do with the circumstances of uh, and the circumstances of the story, including his mother Venus, who's like jealous of Psyche's beauty. So you have like older female jealousy of like the younger, beautiful, beautiful one. But yeah, Cupid is not ugly, but he cannot be seen. So there is this sort of absence of the husband and sort of it's an interesting psychological thing where the the husband is always like longed longed for by the wife in some way, and that's kind of the progression of this story too, where he only appears at 9 o'clock at night, which is, of course, a direct kind of translation of this story from the earlier Roman one. Uh, and even being ugly, he can't attract her with how he looks, which is there's an echo there of the Cupid and Psyche story. But then, of course, this story inserts all sorts of like Judeo-Christian kind of virtue and vice into it with the kindness and the loyalty to family and all of that stuff.
Mhm,
Sort of makes this story makes it more about morality and less
mhm,
about the sort of capricious and willful nature of the gods
mhm,
and the strong emotions only of envy.
mhm,
The other story is more about envy and obedience, and those are both very strong um, forces in this story. But this story, and especially I think this version, it kind of pours on thick the sort of uh, explanations of the virtue of beauty and the how good she is and how self-sacrificing she is and
mhm,
everything and just and how wicked in contrast her older sisters
mhm.
are. But yeah, one thing I noticed that I mentioned to you on our earlier reading is that yeah, speaking of vice and virtue, the uh the father, when he is lost in the woods and he comes to the empty castle, echoing what later will be the experience of his daughter there, it being an empty castle, and he eats the food. I mean, he's given hospitality, right? Which is not something that is extra that people generally in earlier times and including in Greek times, they had a word called xenia, which meant hospitality. And actually, Zeus was the protector of strangers in that world, which, was a much more precarious world where you you really want to have the kindness of strangers to help you out when you're traveling, especially if the weather's inclement, uh, guaranteed. But yeah, so he eats a nice meal and then he sleeps in the bed and he wakes up late. But then, of course, when he oversteps his bounds and tries to take a rose, that's when Beast jumps onto him, pounces on him, and accuses him of ingratitude. But it's interesting that the instigating motive for that is um, beauty. Uh, you know, and it's interesting. And when I say beauty, I don't just mean the will of his daughter named Beauty, but also the beautiful rose,
Hmm.
right? So he has, you know, he needs safety, he needs shelter, he needs to become warm, he needs food and sleep, and he gets all of those basic needs met. And then what does a human do when they don't have when they have their basic needs met is they want the transcendent value, the transcendent goods or values like truth, beauty, goodness. And we go further of those with those in the story where first he seeks out, and it's interesting that beauty is first, right? Just as in this story too, with the title Beauty and the Beast, beauty and
Hmm.
ugliness, you know.
Hmm.
There's an
Yeah.
interesting idea that beauty is like the first of the transcendent values. Anyway, please.
It also had me thinking like maybe the beast is so fierce and protective about it because it's something he's lacking or missing for
Right.
himself,
Yeah.
like at least on the outside. And maybe so yeah, he's kind of so yeah, I think that's his kind of only way to kind of hold on to it or something in a way
Yeah.
because he can't quite have it uh
Yeah. And the
for
story
himself yet.
does this he does say in the story that this is the thing that is most precious to me.
Mhm.
And you might wonder if he learned to appreciate it when he didn't have it. One might imagine him being like a vain, arrogant prince before. That was, I think, in the '90s Disney version. It's something like that, like,
Mhm.
or maybe he's just unkind or something. But vanity and arrogance go together with unkindness anyway. But yeah, that's maybe his character arc of
Mhm.
getting virtue is
Mhm.
finally learning to appreciate beauty and beauty outside of himself,
Mhm.
beauty in nature, beauty in order, and not beauty mixed with vanity and dominance of others or
Mhm.
something.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I thought. I think it was like more than about just his lack of physical beauty for himself, um, but yeah, he's like also like he doesn't have beauty in his life right now. So he's like in the castle, kind of bitter and coming after the fodder. So he's so yeah, it's just there's things missing in his life,
Yeah, yeah,
but
that's
because
right.
of his circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, basically everything's missing in his life except
Mhm.
again the basic needs. I mean, he has shelter in abundance. Um, he has luxury in abundance and he even
Mhm.
has beauty in abundance, but it's like a cold beauty, I guess I could say, because it's
Mhm.
not together with like relationships, you know.
Mhm.
He can't, it's not with the other transcendent goods. He can't have much truth or goodness
Mhm.
since he doesn't have relations. I mean, he is a prince, so one should have deep relations with one's people, right? As a good ruler, as an exemplar for them, but especially governing well. But yeah, he's essentially alone. And so it makes you see the beauty, excuse me, the ugliness that he has as a symptom of his isolation. And it's interesting that the other characters, I keep thinking back to the elder sisters who become statues at the end. There's something about their becoming inanimate, immobile.
Mhm.
You know, they seem to lack spirit in the end because they're statues. They're confined to just stillness, you know. But anyway, yeah, I can't quite make the connection maybe or the a parallel between the ugliness of the prince and the statue like stillness of the ugly sisters at the end of the story.
Mm. Well, like I think maybe the ugliness of the prince is like something that was still changeable because he's still in talking with Beauty and getting to spend time with her, he was able to change, I guess. But the sisters becoming statues, it's kind of like you're saying, it's like they're incapable of change, so they're literally like freezing into rocks. Like they still have the opportunity, but the the fairy godmother like figure says that she doubts it. But
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It seems, yeah, maybe the ugliness of the prince was a sign of his vanity and his ingratitude, and the sisters, being statues are a sign of their not being able to change something. Anyway, the punishment has to fit the crime in some way,
Mhm,
right? I think also with the statue-ness of the sisters, there's I mean, what they have to be out in the weather all the time. They can't move at all. That reminds me of like meditation, either, formal or what, you might better call contemplation.
mhm,
You often will do it without moving at all. And that seems to build some kind of virtue where Andrew Huberman talks about how you need to say no to your nervous system many times a day, like I think he said like a few hundred times a day or something. But there's some kind of virtue, I think, that's built up when you meditate, either formally or not, and you don't move at all. And it's like you're not giving in to your impulses. And so you're building the quieter, deeper virtues. And of course, the sisters, the jealous older sisters of beauty are not like that, right? They admire the dazzling, the wit, the charm, the everything that grabs the senses. And that reminds me that that is something that the beast says he does not have. He does not have beauty, and he does not have sense. He's not witty. He's not charming. And so, in that way, he's also not attractive as a man. And so, he would, despite having like status and maybe physical strength and wealth, um, that that can make a man pretty unattractive to a woman. I know, I think women don't value beauty in a man as much as men do in a woman, but uh, a man who's not good with words, that's uh, that's a little bit harder, right? It's a little bit harder to be attractive as a man that way. So you thought there was some significance to the rose being the sought
mhm,
after object of beauty?
mhm. Yeah, because obviously the rose is one of the most beautiful flowers, but I thought maybe for the beast, it also well, a rose has thorns, so I think it signifies that yes, he has beauty within his reach, but he can't quite grasp it yet.
Yeah.
So he needs something more, like to be
Yeah.
able to have it again in his life.
Yeah. He's incomplete. And that's
Mhm.
when the daughter named Beauty comes into his life and he's able to win her over. Yeah. He doesn't have some of the most important attributes of an attractive man, but he is able to win her sympathy. In this story, that's basically how he wins her over, right? I mean, he also has mystery on his side, which I think is attractive to
Mhm.
women. He gives something for Beauty's active kind of emotions and imagination, like she's a reader, imagination to flow into and expand into.
Mhm.
And yeah, yes, that um, the symbol of a rose for beauty is a very interesting one because I mean, first of all, the many rows of the ROWS, rows of the petals of a rose, ROSE, uh, kind of show a complexity, right? Many, many layers. Uh, but more importantly, as you pointed out, it has thorns, which make it difficult to literally grasp. And so a rose as a symbol of beauty seems to indicate that one must, as in life, as in with the beauty of a woman for a man, one must come to it carefully with wisdom and kind of know how to approach it, know how to grasp it or understand it or try to possess it. Because beauty is attractive, and so you want to go for it, but you have to kind of have caution and have wisdom. And because people often don't have wisdom, they lose their wits, as Beast says he has lost his. In the presence of beauty, uh, women, people, but especially maybe especially women who have beauty can sometimes use that to their advantage, right? To get something that they don't truly love. And so Beauty, the third daughter, is not like that at all. But her sisters are like that, right? Like they even shun people of their own class, merchants, and they would go for a duke or an earl. And of course, they end up, getting nothing and being statues. Yeah, yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, this delving into this story. Um, do you have any parting thoughts on this?
Mm, no, not necessarily, but yeah, it's kind of cliche, but just what everyone says when it comes to this story about just not being deceived by appearances.
Yeah, 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 that's a good lesson of this story. And if you're not deceived by appearances, as Beauty was, and maybe you go forth with full virtue, at least the idea of this story is that you're able to transform things, right? Because Beauty is able to transform her whole family, including her sisters. But they all live happily ever after in the castle because of Beauty's sort of uh, uh, faithfulness to the beast, in her compassion and keeping her word and all that stuff, and also in that she's able to see through his ugly facade, and there is that transformation of his whole body in the end because of that. But yeah, I'm not going to leave this conversation off with a conclusion, but more just images that I thought were pretty interesting. So the complex image of the rose for beauty and for the thing sought after, for that object of desire, and also the statues that the princesses have been turned into. So there's obvious parallel there with what happened to the beast go being transformed from perhaps vain prince into an ugly beast before the start of the action of the story, and now at its end, the two statues that were the ugly on the inside sisters. But I'll leave the last word with you. Do you think the sisters could ever change? Just
Mm,
seeing all the goings on and being
I
around
think
there.
maybe
Mm,
maybe it might take a very, very long time.
yeah. And I think the them being statues kind of symbolizes that, right? This
Hmm.
something that stays still there, lasting a long time. They'll have a lot of time to think
Hmm.
about their lives, right? And who
Yeah.
and their character.
Yeah, I thought they might have to be there for decades or centuries or something,
Yeah.
but who knows?
Hey, you got me starting to think even about like a sequel to these, but I don't know if that would be any good. But yeah, you could have like couple hundred years later, there's like an echo of this story in a new story with these sort of ruined statues. Okay, well, thank you very much for talking to me today.
Okay.